If you're a fan of the Netflix series The Witcher, the new Netflix anime movie The Witcher: Nightmare of the Wolf brings some new context and backstory to what was presented. But is it still worth checking out? Before Geralt, there was his mentor, Vesemir, a swashbuckling young witcher who escaped a life of poverty to slay monsters for coin. But when a strange new monster begins terrorizing a politically fraught kingdom, Vesemir finds himself on an adventure that forces him to confront the demons of his past. So the story follows a man named Vesemir from boy to powerful witcher. This movie lets us in on his life before becoming a witcher, but also, and maybe even more importantly, how he became a witcher. The series with Henry Cavill featured several different timelines that confused me at first. In this, we really only see the present and then have flashbacks to fill in key points as the story develops. I do think there are small moments that I could have used even more information on some events, and that there were a couple of times where the flashbacks weren't as obvious as I would have preferred, but I was still able to catch up really quickly. But the main story is pretty linear and easy to follow, and I think the animation looks great. I like the mainly drab color palette, making the limited use of bright colors pop even more. And usually those came in the form of magic, blood, or weird fire, but I thought it all looked good. And the backgrounds are painted to give good depth, but if you watch a lot of anime, you'll be used to some of the static backgrounds with only the foreground being animated. When I watched the live action series, I went in blind. I didn't have any background or real context for it, and this really fills in the gaps and shows us where witchers come from, or rather how they're even chosen. It gives some good background and also builds out the world for us. It's also quite a dark story, especially in the development of the Witchers. And I was unaware how this happened, so when it's told here, it's not what I had expected. And something that I really enjoyed in this was the monster aspect. Witchers hunt monsters, and in this, we get a really good variety of creatures. Some are wildly bizarre, and even if they're not fully explained in what they're made up of, we understand how some of them came about and why they're prolific in the world. This movie has some good emotion in it. As we follow Vesemir, he's teamed up with a mage named Tetra, with the shared directive to rid the land of a dangerous new creature that's just wreaking absolute havoc and destruction on the kingdom. Neither Vesemir nor Tetra are stoic. We see how acts impact them, and what was unexpected for me, I saw a bunch of compassion emanate from Vesemir, showing that even though he may give off this cold-hearted killer vibe, he still has a heart and he can show sympathy. As Vesemir and Tetra travel, we get more and more insight into the world in which they live, and the story doles out character background and development over the course of their journey, but it also provides some really great story details. The story conflict is also great in influencing character growth. As Vesemir encounters more on his quest, he is challenged in a few ways, which then cause him to examine his past and his beliefs. I think the story is fairly simple, which that's not a negative, but they take the simple and then make it wildly intriguing because of the small complexities that they introduce with the characters. And I like the tension that exists between the players, especially as more of the plot unfolds and we see where the story is going. I think some of the motives and outcomes are predictable, or at least they're expected, but that didn't make me upset. I had a sense of where the story was going, and when it arrived, it was typically accompanied by some large action sequences. This is about 80 minutes long, and I thought it moved pretty efficiently through the plot. And while this isn't a non-stop action movie, there are several parts that become very exciting. And the action can get wild, violent, and bloody. And I had mentioned how there's a bunch of bizarre creatures, and I like the creativity that went into their designs. Nothing about them is straightforward, which falls right in line with the story arc. The action moves quickly and almost blurred at times because it's happening so fast. So I do wish that there were some times that the monsters moved a bit slower so that we could appreciate the crazy detail of their strengths and the threat that they possess. Now don't get me wrong, it's not like we can't focus on any of them, but there just were moments that I wanted a clearer view and to see them longer on screen and not just moving so quickly around. But there are also multiple scenes in the movie that take the time to slow down and then let us focus on character interactions. Some of the scenes are heartfelt and touching or even pointed in their dramatic arc. During these quieter moments, we get more exposition that fill in portions to catch us up from past events or even to show us the current state of a character that will have a big impact on an upcoming scene. Now, I enjoyed the voice cast in this. The main players are Theo James as Vesemir and Graham McTavish as his mentor, Deglin. There's also Mary McDonald as Lady Zerbst, who sends Vesemir on his quest. And finally there's Laura Pulver, who voices Tetra, and she joins Vesemir, like I said, on the task to rid the land of the monsters. Each of them gives some great emotion without getting ridiculous in the performance. The tone and timbre of their voices match the feeling of the scene, which then makes these scenes resonate rather than just being distracting or silly. I think as the movie reaches its conclusion, it provides some good closure, but also opens the door for some of what we then experience in the live action series. I think there is more opportunity to fill in even more of the timeline, and I'd love to see another movie of this quality do so. Overall, the art and animation looks wonderful. The story arc is easy to follow, and I really appreciate that it fills in the world so much more for me, being somebody who's never read the books or played the game. I feel like I have a better understanding for the live action series because of the background that this one provides. The story is exciting and it contains some good emotion that is complemented by an excellent voice cast. And despite some of the flashbacks not being as clear in transition and portions of the story being predictable and expected, I had a lot of fun with this and I look forward to more. There's no sex but nudity, some profanity, and a ton of violence. I give The Witcher Nightmare of the Wolf 4 out of 5 couches. Are you a fan of the Witcher franchise? Is this anime something you've been looking forward to? Are you excited for season 2 of the live action series? I'm excited to see where the story takes us, but I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this review, please give it a like. Also, don't forget to share and subscribe. I'm Chris. This is Movies and Munchies. Thanks for couching with me.